Hey folks, John with KGTropicals.com. I'm here at the fish house of Discus Hans in Baltimore, Maryland. We're picking his brain all about the Stenker discus. Hans, one of the first questions or statements I always get about discus is, oh, they're so hard to keep. They're so delicate. You have to have your water parameters all perfect. And talk to me about why your fish are so much easier to keep than others.
You know, first one thing, discus are not hard to keep, but discus are expensive. And all the fish are more or less hard to keep. You have to do your water changes, you have to feed your fish. The point is only that discus costs more.
That's
so
true.
if people lose one discus, then all of a sudden discus are hard to keep.
Right?
People kill every day here in the US more than 100,000 cardinals. But I have nobody ever said to me, oh man, cardinals are so hard to keep.
That's a great point.
Because it's a cheaper fish, you know. Right. And if people lose a discus, you know, discus are just like other fish. Keep your water clean, feed them well, and they're easy. And there is no fish in the whole wide world as a discus that warns you by setting up the stress bars, by getting dark, and then die.
Right.
In that time, you have plenty of time to see on your discus that something is going wrong. You know, and you got a cardinal, and one moment they're swimming, they're eating, and an hour later they are dead. And that doesn't happen except when you got a really bacterial problem. Discus can die fast, but that is really not happening many times that you really have a big bacterial problem in your tank. But discus are just like other fish. They're easy to keep if you do your work.
So, but what about the people that say you have to use RO water, you have to, you know, it has to be absolutely perfect? What do you say to that?
No, that is not true. You use RO water on discus only when you want to breed them. And if you want to breed them, you only use RO water to have a higher hatching rate. Because we keep all the discus here on Baltimore tap water. And even over here they are spawning and having fry.
But it's got eggs in here right now.
But that is with a lower hatching rate.
Right.
But we are not breeders. Stenker breeds the fish and we sell them. So we are not breeding the fish over here. The only thing what we do is proving the pairs.
And we're going to talk about that in a minute, but now, I mean, you're making it seem like anybody can keep them. Are discus for the beginner fish keeper, or do you have to know a bit about keeping fish before you can get them?
You know, you have to know a little bit about fish keeping and keep your water clean and feeding your fish. You know, I get calls from people that ask me, are they tropical fish? Do I need a heater in the tank? Okay, discus is nothing for that kind of people. You know, you have to know that you cannot throw them in your pond in the backyard. You know,
put them in with your Oscars.
It's not a good idea. But you know, those are the things you have to have a little bit knowledge about your fish before I would start with discus fish.
Now, you recently endorsed a flake food, the Cobalt Discus Hans Discus Flakes. We've had it in the store. We can't keep it on the shelves. I mean, as soon as people see his name on it, they buy it up.
Don't make my head grow now.
Well, I mean, it's true. It's a fact. I wish I could have got it on video. I would have shown you. But talk about what is the best things. Obviously, that Cobalt Flake is a good flake to feed your fish. But what else is the newbie to discus going to feed their discus?
You know, the best thing is to feed them a meat mix. Because that is where your discus grow the fast and the best, and you get the best results with that. Another problem is with the meat mix, it's raw meat. So you have to keep your water clean. The more you feed, especially with smaller fish, the more you feed a raw meat or raw fish and everything in that mix, the more you have to do your water changes. And not everybody has the time to do water changes all the time.
Right.
For those people, I would say use the Cobalt Flake food because it's a good alternative for the food mix. It's based more or less on our food mix, and we test it out and we grew some batches of smaller fish with only the Cobalt Flake food, and we had very good results. So it's a very good food, and yeah,
What about, I know we sell a ton of this, the frozen foods, frozen bloodworms, brine shrimp, things like that?
You know, everything has not enough feeding value for your fish. You have to see it as a snack in between. You need a lot of protein to grow your fish, but it's with every fish. And the protein you don't find all the time in bloodworms or just some shrimps.
Okay. So, all right, we know how to feed them now. We know that they're not that difficult to keep, but if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I've been keeping fish for a while, I know what I'm doing, I know how, how the whole nitrogen cycle works and all that, but I've never kept discus. I want to get discus for the first time. Is there a particular size that is easier than others? Should they get a larger one because they're figures, airplane? We're right near BWI Airport. Is there a particular size that you would recommend to the new discus keeper?
You know, people always want the most amount of fish for the door. So a lot of people buy the smaller fish, but smaller fish, you can make them and you can break them. More or less, the bigger the fish is, the lesser you can mess them up. Small fish, 2.5 inch, 3 inch, they need a lot of feedings. Will you grow them to a good big size?
More feedings means more work too.
More work, more water changes, because you have to keep the water clean. If you have a 4 to 5 inch fish, then we did most of the work already for you.
That's why they cost more.
Why they cost more, but in the long run, if you look how much money and water you put in a small fish to grow to the 4 inch fish,
right,
it's not much of a difference. And if you have a 4 inch fish, it's not easy to mess that up because those are more or less through the critical growth stage.
So, I mean, it would be easier then to keep the bigger ones. I guess your answer to my question is the larger the fish, the easier they are to keep.
More or less.
Okay.
Right, that especially when you want to keep them in a planter tank. For people with a planter tank, on the 2.5 inch and the 3 inch, you have to do a lot of water changes, a lot of feeding, a lot of water changes to grow them well. In a planter tank, it's not always a good idea to grow them in a planter tank because the water changes will mess up your plants. So for planter tanks, I would go for a minimum size of 4 inch.
Now, in the last video, you were reluctant to, but we talked about your website. And I had a question about that. I hear a lot of people in my store, they'll say, oh, I'll never order fish online. I'll never, it's too stressful for the fish to be shipped from Baltimore to wherever, or from King George to wherever. What do you say to people who are afraid of the shipping process, shipping fish to?
You know, I can imagine, because you go on an online store, you send somebody a lot of money, and you hope your fish is going to be okay. But if I give you an idea, we ship a lot of fish all over the year. I think last year I lost maybe 4 fish in shipping.
When he says he sells a lot of fish, folks, he sells a lot.
No, trust me. You know, we know what we are doing. We know when to use heat packs. The only problem is the fish that we lost were more or less that something happens and we ship all our fish to FedEx, priority overnight. But things happen. Planes break down, weather, FedEx mess up. They're all human. And I don't want to say any bad about FedEx because they do a great job for me in shipping my fish. But things happen. And sometimes a box is delayed and the people get them the next day instead of the next morning, and they get them a day later, 24 hours later. Most of the time the fish are still fine because we know how to pack our fish, right? You know, and things happen, but you know, and most of the time when things go wrong, where we lost the fish, was in the shipment because it was 24 hours later that the fish were delivered. But most of the time, and we still have a live arrival guarantee. And even if the fish come in alive and they are, say, 24 hours late, we work with you. You don't lose your money. We want happy customers, and read on my online store the comments, and those are real comments. We don't delete comments. We don't put our own comments up like a lot of homepages do or online stores. We don't mess with that. I don't even know how to do it. So we don't mess with that. And I want every customer that order fish from us, I want it to be a happy customer and that they enjoy their fish. And we take care of people.
Well, and let me tell you something that he does that I don't even do this. Every single shipment that he sends out, he will watch the FedEx tracking, and he'll make sure that that package is okay. I had to come here at a certain time today because he was watching packages as they were being shipped, and he had to make sure that those packages got to the customers on time, and then called the customer and talked to them before he could come here and meet with me. So you're going to get a call from him every time you order a fish because he wants to make sure that they're okay. So, all right.
It's a part of the job.
I mean, I don't even do that. So good for you that you do that.
That's why I'm better than you.
I know. Well, we all know that. He's better looking too. I mean, look at the guy. So, all right. I guess we got to wait for the airplane here for a second, but I wanted to talk about it on the website, and I'm going to do a little more of a detailed walkthrough in a minute and show more of the fish. But you sell everything from 2.5 up to 6-inch fish in here,
and 6, 7, and jumbos.
And you even sell breeding pairs.
Yeah.
So I wanted to grab the camera, and then we're going to go take a look at Hans's breeding pairs, and he's going to talk about how they come up with breeding pairs. It's pretty fascinating. So let's take a look at that.